We're going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition.
Let's face it, Earth's population is rapidly growing, and Santa's been doing this gift delivery thing for centuries. He's getting up there in years. I think it's time to ditch the reindeer and consider solid rocket propulsion. And considering there's a decent chance I'll be without a job soon, I decided to go right past the government contract concept and go right where the money really is, the North Pole concepts. So join me as we prototype the new Santa propulsion system. And I think this is gonna be a big winner. I really do. Obviously, Santa himself is not an inherently stable, vertically flying guy. So we're gonna need some assistance in stabilizing it. We're gonna do that with my friend Base Drag. And to keep things on brand, we're going to do that with this generic saucer sled that I bought in San Diego, California, believe it or not. Who's using these in San Diego and for what? If you have those answers, please feel free to leave them in the comments. But for now, we are going to start taking Santa here and making him rocket powered. And I think the first place to start is knocking his block off. Shall we?
We're starting with knocking his block off because the SPS, that's Santa Propulsion System, needs a recovery system as well, and I'm basically planning on turning the inside into a normal rocket with a tube and a nose cone to preserve any hope that this might actually work.
Okay, things are already going better than I thought. For one, the lights are still on. But one thing I didn't really address is that Santa is heavy, and I was really worried about how we were going to correct that. But it turns out that he's just wearing some lead boots. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell. Ooh, punch a hole. Yeah, it's fine. That won't be the only punch in it.
In order to get a tube on the inside, we had to punch a 3.5-inch hole in the middle of Santa and then punch a corresponding hole in the sled as well. With those two tasks out of the way, we stood the Santa up on the sled with the corresponding holes aligned and ran a 3-inch tube and nose cone through the middle, and to our surprise, everything seems to be going really well.
Why is that so easy?
It works so well.
The next part, though, is where things got a little more complex. I reached a tape measure inside to get a rough estimate of the front to back and side to side sizes of the inside of the Santa because we need something in there to keep the tube aligned. After that, I used those measurements to create a rectangle on a piece of cardstock and pushed it inside the Santa, then used a permanent marker to get a rough outline of the inside of the Santa's shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to create a template, so I threw it on a piece of 3/8 plywood and cut it out with a jigsaw. After that cut, we put the plywood in the Santa, flipped it upside down, and put a bit of paint on one end of the tube and pushed it in as center as possible so that we knew where we needed to drill the hole for the tube to pass through. Next, I busted out a 3-inch hole saw to put a hole in the middle of the plywood for the tube to run through. And if you haven't read Adam Savage's book, Every Tool is a Hammer, there's a chapter in which he outlines the importance of clamping down wood when you're working on it, and I would just like to highlight that right about now.
I knew that was gonna happen.
I thought I could hold on to it, but clearly I couldn't. Remember, kids, when it's you versus the power of power tools, the power tools are always going to win. Do things safely. With all that done, it's looking pretty good, so we used a similar technique but with a Sharpie to decide where we needed to put a hole in Santa's head so that we could pass a piece of all thread through and attach it to the nose cone. Once it was measured, it was just a simple matter of putting a hole right through Santa's dome piece.
It's lobotomy time, Santa!
And attaching the nose cone to it.
right, we're in. Well, we're back. Day 2 of building Santa. We got a little bit further than maybe I kind of expected. I told myself I was going to build the whole thing yesterday, and then like halfway through the day, I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. But today, basically, we just got to finish buttoning it up, and then I got to figure out how exactly I'm going to mount this block to his back so we have rail buttons. Before we do that, though, I'm sure you may have noticed how icy I am, because, I mean, the ugly rocket sweater is just heat, quite frankly. If you'd like to be as iced out and super fly as I am, you can get yourself an ugly rocket sweater right now at rocketvlogs.com. I will be pulling them down around December 10th because that's about the cutoff for being able to order one and still get it without expedited shipping. I could leave it up a little bit longer, but I don't want anybody to order one and not get it in time for Christmas. So that's kind of a preventative measure. This also is a great time to mention that today, this day that we're working on this rocket, I got laid off. It wasn't through my own doing. It's kind of an industry-wide situation. For those who don't know, my full-time day job is I'm an automotive journalist. I had an amazing 2-year run with a company called Motor Biscuit where I got to drive Ferraris and Maseratis and make videos about it. For that, I'll always be grateful. But unfortunately, Google pulled a lot of the traffic and did some content updates that just outright killed the company this morning. The CEO brought us all into a meeting and fired pretty much everybody. I think 4 people were salvaged of the almost 30 of us on staff. So, rough time, woe is me, yeah. I don't want you guys to feel like I am leaning on you to get through this, but if you do want to help continue to support rocketry videos getting made, now would be a fantastic time to check out patreon.com/rocketvlogs or click the join button below and join the channel membership. I post a lot of behind the scenes stuff. The Patreon and members have known about this project for a lot longer than you have, and if you want to be a part of that, the links will be in the description. It costs as little as $1 or $2 a month, depending on which one you go to. On Patreon, we have special quarterly stickers and t-shirts, and every quarter that we sustain 25 or more patrons, I give away a $100 rocket kit in a caption contest. So please go check that out. I appreciate you guys all being here, and I understand completely if you don't have the money to help financially support the channel, but you can do a lot more good than you think. If you're not subscribed, press the subscribe button, press the like button, and if you would be so kind as to share this video with your friends, post it on Facebook, do whatever. It goes a lot further than you might think. Now, enough with that spiel. Let's talk about what we're doing with our boy Saint Nick today.
Just like with any rocket, one of the most important aspects is to distribute the load applied by the motor throughout various components so that it doesn't focus on one spot. That can cause a disaster. Seeing as I'm not too confident in the strength of this plastic sled, my solution was to cut a roughly 8-inch diameter plywood centering ring and glue it profusely to both the motor tube and the sled itself. Effectively, doing this ensures that the motor's thrust is distributed throughout the wood rings, both top and bottom, and the tube. Gluing it to the sled also prevents the possibility of the motor violently thrusting the ring into the sled and causing a hammering effect. We want a nice pushing effect on the rocket as a whole, not just one component of it. What I thought was going to be one of the more difficult parts of this build, finding a way to put it on the launch rail, was actually quite simple. We sized up a piece of 1x1 plywood and simply drilled into the plastic on Santa's back.
Yeah! This is an important step. It's like a plumb bob.
Yeah.
I used 3-inch 832 stainless steel screws to both mount the rail buttons and mount the whole assembly to Santa. A stack of jam nuts as a spacer at the top end keep the rail buttons aligned, and a hole drilled in the sled lets the rail pass through to make it nice and easy to get him on the pad.
First for me.
It works so good.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid. Oh! Alright, game's over.
With that done, I built a very basic and standard high-power rocketry motor mount with a shock cord attached to it so that we have a place to put our recovery gear, and glued it into the back, then proceeded to have an existential crisis about whether or not this is actually going to work.
Okay, it's 11:15. This thing flies tomorrow. I made a RockSim file, sort of. Here's the thing. That's vaguely, those are the dimensions of the Santa and the sled and everything. This big cone here on the back that you see there, that is used to kind of trick the Barrowman equation for rockets that are short. I don't know if that applies in this exact situation, but putting it there
does show it being extremely stable and going 1,000 feet on the J350 that we're putting in it. The problem is, without that cone, it shows it spiraling wildly out of control and going 96 feet and then hitting the ground. I like the former more, and I want to believe that the cone trick will work with a rocket like this, but the truth is, I don't know. So we're just gonna roll with it and hope that that's the case and it flies perfect. And with that, we trekked out to Friends of Amateur Rocketry to put this flying Santa to the test.
Gonna be a scary flight. Yeah, guys over at the LA test stand, just keep your eyes on this, please, in case it's gonna go crazy. 10-4.
It will go crazy.
Thank you. Okay, we got a good range, good sky. Everyone I need in the cover. We're going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition.
Nice.
Okay, well, you know what? It didn't loop. I think the principle is proven. Surprisingly, I was getting real worked up there thinking that the J350 was too aggressive, but just because the initial 180-pound hit, I should have done J415, J800, something. We really could have got some altitude, but there you go. If you want to build a giant Santa sitting on a saucer sled for base drag, don't listen to RockSim. It's stable, mostly. I wish we had pointed the rail up. I pointed the rail this way specifically to keep it from going towards people, but it kind of just went where the rail was pointed and kept going like a spool would. Makes sense for it to follow that arc. Yeah, flying Santa. Myth unbusted? I don't know what to say here. Yeah, it went perfect. No, yeah, it's good. Oh, somebody's saying, yeah, okay, so look, it's not even that broken. It's pretty good. It's a proof of concept. You're gonna pass. You're really gonna pass on this opportunity. Santa, yeah, we'll talk later. We'll talk later. I guess that's a pass from the North Pole then, so I'm gonna have to ask you guys to check out rocketvlogs.com, buy yourself an ugly rocket sweater. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Rocket Vlogs. My name is Braden Carlson, and this went pretty well. It could have gone a lot worse, that's for sure. Don't forget to hit like, press the subscribe button. You can help support the channel on patreon.com/rocketvlogs or buy merch from rocketvlogs.com. I will be getting rid of the ugly rocket sweater fairly soon, within the next week or so, just so that nobody tries to order one and doesn't get it in time for Christmas. There is expedited shipping options, but you know, do your thing. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.